You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Ball pitcher, like I said, an amphibious pitcher, not a ambidextrous. So we're live. We're going to wait for the thumbs up here from John K., obviously, the guy, the man, the myth, the legend. Let us know that we are rolling on the Facebook Live group. While I kill air, he's giving me the 2 thumbs up. Carl, the floor is yours.
All right. Welcome into our another Tuesday show with Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler. And of course, joining me is Mr. Nick Kendell. And we are going to have a special guest coming in here pretty soon, Mr. Bob Morris, our cap guy that knows everything that you could ever want to know about the cap. I mean, this next week, it's going to be big. We still don't even know what the number is going to be yet.
Hey, it's been big. All these tags coming down the line. I mean, it's season, man. Free agency is here, right? Like that's, I know it's March 17th, but like the moves, they're happening now. So great to get Bob on here. Really excited to have him on here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm interested to see what he has to say. Just one off Bronco topic: New Orleans using a tag when they have no cap space.
Bringing Bob on here, but then the cap is a myth. You know, what are we doing? Right? No, I'm just kidding. You got to pay it eventually, but we'll definitely talk about that a little bit. I mean, they're also talking about long-term deals for Ramczyk and Lattimore, right? Like, I don't know what they're going to do. It's really going to be an interesting situation there. It's just the Saints print money, right? That's first you had Bounty Gate, now you got some printing money, right? The forgery. So anyway, Carl, good to see you. Happy Tuesday night, everybody. Building the Broncos. Let's get it rolling.
Yeah. All right. Well, here before we do, we got to get to a little bit of matters of business. All right. We also want to let you know that you can follow us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. John behind the scenes at John K MHH, and Bob, our guest today, at Bob Morris Sports.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
And just a lot of information that you're going to really need during this time. Make sure you're following all 4 of us. We're going to be posting like crazy over this next week. Next Tuesday, right? That's the start of free agency, or is it Wednesday?
I think it's Wednesday. So
Wednesday, March 17th.
What is it? The legal tampering is the 15th, which is Monday, because that's my wife's birthday.
There you go.
The Ides of March, as they say, right? Before we get on to Bob here, real quick, just want to give a shout out to Tyler Randall here. Super excited to catch this after work. Thank you for working, Tyler. I know it's a busy time right now for everybody. Thanks for all you guys do. Hashtag Broncos Country, hashtag MHH4L, and hashtag BTB, and hashtag State of Being. Tyler, coming from the top rope, we really do appreciate that. Hopefully this brings a smile to your face when you're working and listening to this later. But you know what brings a smile to my face, Carl? Getting our friends on the show, sharing the spotlight, and hearing some other just other opinions out there, right? You know, we like to bring on experts, and, you know, we have a lot of hot air ourselves, but if we can bring a little bit more hot air into the room, we got to do it. So let's introduce to the show our friend, Bob Morris Sports. Yeah, guys, follow him on Twitter at Bob Morris Sports. Bob, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. How you guys doing tonight?
Oh, you know, just living the dream, getting by. And guys, there's a little bit of an echo with Bob's mic, but we're just going to deal with it. It's not bad at all, but just you're not going crazy. There is a little bit. So, Bob, we bringing you on today because we know you were supposed to get on with Chad earlier this week, but we're getting you in here. Chase Wellner again. Bob is the man. I will reiterate that. Bob, the cat builder. I'm sure you've gotten that one before. But Bob, you dropped a piece recently that was pretty all-encompassing for the Broncos as far as it comes to a salary cap perspective and just where exactly they stand heading into this free agency period.
Yes, and there's a little bit of updates that have come from that. Of course, I'm sure everybody's, of course, aware that the Broncos made a couple of moves early about a few weeks ago when they cut A.J. Boye and they cut Jarrell Casey, and we probably saw that both those moves were probably going to be coming. And then, of course, they put the franchise tag on Justin Simmons. And then just today, they tendered their exclusive rights free agents. Those are Deontay Spencer, Calvin Anderson, and Trey Marshall. So now they're at $30.3 million with cap space for over the cap. And their current estimates, they're kind of estimating right now about $180 million base salary cap. But that could come in a little bit higher. It could be there's something that I saw from Pro Football Talk that was saying it could be $183 million. So that's about what they're looking at. So a little more than $30 million is probably what the Broncos have at this point.
Interesting. That's, good information there. It was good to see that those exclusive rights free agent tenders, right? Those are pretty much no-brainers. But I do want to pick your brain on where you think the Broncos are going to potentially utilize their restricted free agents, and that would be Tim Patrick, Alexander Johnson, and Philip Lindsay. Obviously, I think it's about $3.5 million for that second-round tender. What are your opinions? Do you see the Broncos placing those tenders on all three of those guys, or is there a potential one of them gets a first-round tender or an original round tender, which for the listeners at home, that would mean that the Broncos, if another team signed them, they would not be getting any return back because all those guys were UDFAs.
Yeah, I think they're all going to wind up getting the second-round tenders because if the Broncos, if George Paton's thinking maybe we want to trade one of these guys, the second-round tender is the best way to do that. I will point out that ever since they started the new formats with the restricted free agents where it was first round, second round, there's actually kind of a slight difference between the other one. You can go original round, which usually happens if a player's been was drafted, then waived before his rookie contract was finished, then re-signed. That and that happened a couple of years ago with Mike Gillislee, who was with the Bills. They I'll be quick.
I liked him out of Florida, running back, right?
And they drafted him like in the 5th round. He didn't finish out the rookie contract, but they brought him back, and then the Patriots signed him, and Bills didn't match the offer. They got a 5th round pick out of that. So of course, but then the right of first refusal tender basically says we're just going to tender him at the lowest salary possible, and then you get no compensation at all if you use that. So, but to the point, there has not been any player who's got the first or second round tender who's ever been signed to an offer sheet. And I think a lot of that has to go back to that, first round picks, obviously the cost control there is certainly a benefit there. With second round picks, it's the same thing. You get cost control there. With the original round or right of first refusal, the cost to sign those players tends to outweigh the risk that might be involved. So I think they're all going to get second round tenders. And then if George Paton says we want to trade these guys, then he can give him permission to seek a trade, and then he can at least get something in return for them.
Nice. I was going to ask you, I saw one of your points in the article was you have a certain cornerback on the free agent market that you really like. And I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on why the Broncos should go after Xavier Woods?
Well, obviously I picked Xavier Woods because of the George Paton connection, but I think that he's basically in that price range where because of his age and because it was 2 seasons ago, he wasn't playing well at all. He certainly played well this past season, but I think he's going to come in at a little bit less money than, say, guys like Richard Sherman. I could see him. I don't think Sherman's going to reset the market, but he's probably going to get up a little higher because of his name.
Right.
His name, Patrick Peterson, he might come in a little bit higher. And then there's probably, I think there's one other player.
William Jackson. I think he'll probably get pretty high.
Yeah, William Jackson might come in a little bit underneath that. I'd have to take a look at the full list of what over the cap's got for where they rank guys. But he's probably going to come in a little bit lower, so the Broncos can kind of get him probably around maybe that $8 million per year range, which would be a pretty good deal for the Broncos to get him keep him for a year, and then maybe give him some injury protection in the second year, and that gives you a veteran without having to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point there. I do have a question for you here real quick while Carl looks like he's frozen. It sounds like the Broncos are going to be pretty interested in multiple cornerbacks here in the market. Do you have any too? You obviously pointed out Xavier Woods. Is there another cornerback that you think piques your interest that fits financially for the Broncos? And maybe maybe I could offer a little bit more on the scheme fit side of things, because it does sound like they might get 2 cornerbacks.
Oh, goodness. Well, I don't know if they're necessarily going to go out and get 2. There's some players that I could probably caution people about. Shakeem Griffin's probably going to get a name that gets tossed around and not a lot, but stuff that I've read about him, he's very scheme dependent, and he can be kind of a boom or bust player. So if he's trying to get up there to that $10 million or more range, that's probably not what you want to do. Now, if you get him on a 1-year prove it deal and he just wants to kind of show what he can do, well, I'd be willing to consider him on that. But let's see, William Jackson III, that's the only thing I'd caution there about him is that he's 29 years old. So he's not exactly that young of a player. And now he's going to be entering a second contract. So if you're going to look at some players like that, if you're trying to get like another corner, Troy Hill, maybe you look at Troy Hill. He's 30 years old. Again, like Rhodes, he shouldn't come in at a high price. And he's pretty versatile. So if you don't get Rhodes, I'd say Troy Hill's probably the next guy you'd want to look at because of the versatility. might actually be what the Broncos need, because if he can play multiple spots on the field, that gives Fangio some options.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask you. Go ahead. I was just going to ask you. You have in your article also about re-signing Shelby Harris, and I saw you have it's a 3-year deal, $27 million, so $9 million per year. I know last year he was hoping to get closer to the 12 to 15 million a year. And then, of course, he comes back, does his prove-it year, has a pretty darn good year other than being sick. And do you think that's kind of be his market there, about that $9 million?
It's kind of one of those things where you look at that Shelby's kind of one of those that can go either way. Obviously, he's not going to get up to where Leonard Williams is probably going to get. He's not going to get into that. That I'm looking at some of the. I need to actually get my other tab up here. But anyway, he's probably not going to be getting up into that top tier. The tier he's probably looking at getting to is DJ Reader, and that's it's going to be interesting to see if he gets there. I think the one guy to kind of look at is Darwin Tomlinson, who's probably going to be trying to get into that range as well. So a lot of it's just going to depend on what the rest of the market thinks. Tomlinson's the better run defender, while Harris has got more to offer in terms of pass rush. And, of course, pass breakups are kind of what he's really, really built his stock upon. So it's kind of hard to say. I think two things that kind of work against Harris right now is that he's 30 years old, and he basically emerged from the futures contract signings, and there might be some people that are kind of thinking, is this more about that Bill Kohler brings out the best in him? And if so, do we think our coaching staff can do that?
Yeah, and I got a question for you to that point. Shelby Harris, I think it was Mike Klis who recently said that the Broncos will probably let him test the market and see if he wants to get that kind of money, then they might let him walk. Just, might not have the cash to do that. Are there any veteran kind of bargain bin interior defensive linemen that pique your interest? Because Mike Klis specifically said that the Broncos may look for that kind of player who can come in, push to be a starter, at worst rotational guy that can play maybe, 3 tech, 4 tech, 5 tech kind of stuff. Because now you got obviously Purcell, you got Jones, you got Deshaun Williams, who was actually pretty good last year, and Ajim is going to factor into the rotation somewhat this year.
Yeah, Xavier Rhodes was one guy that I was kind of looking at there. I mean, not Xavier Rhodes, Xavier Woods, with the Cowboys. I'm getting these players mixed up. Yeah. So anyway, Xavier Woods was with the Cowboys, and he's a pretty versatile player, so he might be the type of player to look at. Haven't looked a lot in depth on some others. Maybe you look at some of these guys that come down a little lower. I know that Eric's mentioned Sheldon Rankins, and his deal voided this year, so he's going to be able to hit the open market. He's just 27 years old, so that's certainly a player that you can certainly look at, trying to look at these other free agents that are here.
My bargain bin guy is Robertson Harris. He's got experience with Fangio. He's super long. I think he's got some versatility. He might not ever be a starter, but he's been stuck behind Akeem Hicks. And Akeem Hicks might become available too, especially now that the Bears have tagged Allen Robinson. But Roy Robertson Harris, I liked him. I think the Broncos played the Bears, and that was that Chad Kelly game a few years ago. And I remember Roy Robertson Harris sticking out. I'm like, oh, big, long, athletic defensive lineman, sign me up, baby. So always been a little pet of mine. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing to keep in mind with most of the interior defenders that are hitting free agency is that I'm looking at a lot of them are 30 years old or older. So
short term,
if you're trying to look for somebody who's younger, it's not necessarily the best spot to look, but there's some of these younger players who haven't gotten a lot of snaps, but because they haven't gotten a lot of snaps, they should come at a lower cost. I just lost my earbud here. So anyway, but if the Broncos can't come to terms with Shelby Harris and he finds a better offer somewhere else, then there's certainly some options out there that would probably come in at less money. And you know what Bill Kohler's done? He gets the most out of just about anybody that comes under his tutelage.
And absolutely, before we get you out of here, Bob, because I know you got a lot going on, Holden Adams here, a friend of the show, always coming in here with great questions. Probably the biggest question when it comes to the Broncos cap space this offseason, and outside of the Justin Simmons contract now and also the quarterback position, Von Miller. What's going to happen with Von Miller? $18 million a year they can save if they cut him. I think it's 4.5 dead. What's going to happen, Bob? We're gun to your head, gut feeling, what happens with Von Miller? Is he a Bronco next year, extension, play on his current contract?
I think the most likely situation is that he's going to be back, but whether or not it's on a reduced salary or restructured contract, which basically in this case it would be an extension that would just lower his cap number. It's all going to depend on how aggressive George Paton wants to get in free agency. And the big thing he's going to have to do if he wants Bob Miller to take a little less money, he's got to sell it this way to tell Miller that, there's a couple guys that I think can help us out. Are you willing to take a little less money so we've got the cash to pay that player, whether that's if they want to keep Justin Simmons or they see a player that said, here's somebody we think can really finish out our defense. Are you willing to help us out? If you sell it that way, Miller's probably be more agreeable to do something.
Well, absolutely. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on today. You do great work. Guys, again, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Bob Morris Sports. He is the cap guy for Mile High Huddle. Always does really good work as far as the contract stuff, the value stuff. And Bob, you got anything you're working on right now that's coming down the tracks?
Well, I'll be trying to work on a little piece about players that got franchise tags and how that's going to impact certain players. Right now, I can comment briefly. Marcus Williams, Marcus May, both safeties, both got the franchise tag. Williams, with the Saints cap situation, they're going to have to get him extended to lower his cap number. So that one's probably going to be possibly having an impact on Justin Simmons' negotiations sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Those safety money. I mean, safeties do not get paid in the NFL right now. And if you can tag one of those guys, especially that first tag, your odds are you're getting a pretty good return on investment. So, Bob,
Right.
Thank you so much for your time today. We'll be looking out for that piece, and stay safe, bud.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Bob.
We'll see you.
Oh, that was awesome. We always love having Bob come on the show. Haven't really talked to him much from this kind of thing since the NFL draft. So a lot of fun. I know he's a busy guy, and we got a lot to talk about too. But let's get to these super chats here. First off, this one caught my eye. From Big E Bronco. What's up, my brothers from other mothers and Nick? Is this a shot at me? What's going on here? Right, Big E, what's going on? We got to talk here. I appreciate that. That one actually made me laugh pretty hard. So I know we had one from, here we go. Mr. Boggins. Thoughts on Calvin Anderson at swing tackle? Well, guys, first thing I'll say is make sure you don't tweet anything negative about him. Not that he's ever come at me, but he's one of those dudes who searches his names on Twitter. That's, which I know for some teams, for prospects, is like a red flag that they'll take guys off their boards if they're like searching for themselves. So, we'll see about that. But Calvin Anderson, thoughts on him as a swing tackle? I know he had that good game against Carolina at left tackle, kind of hit or miss at right tackle. Your thoughts now that he has been tendered as an exclusive rights free agent?
Well, I will say this. I got to read an article the other day. I don't remember which newspaper wrote it or which website. I can't remember, but they interviewed him, and he talked about how he is spending this entire offseason with Garrett Bowles. That he's actually living. I think he's living with Garrett Bowles out in California.
Aren't they doing a hot tub live streaming series? Like they're doing big boys in the hot tub or something.
Something like that. But anyway, he's like, okay, Garrett Bowles, he's the guy that took this giant step. I want to be that guy that does that too. And so he has latched on to Garrett Bowles, and hey, this is a great sign for Garrett Bowles as well, really stepping into that leadership of taking these younger guys under his wings and saying, hey, I'm going to show you what I did. And he said their workouts have been ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It has pushed him beyond what he's done before. And so I have high hopes that he can really turn into at least a swing tackle. I mean, at his price, even next year when he's going to be a restricted free agent, that's a bargain. To have your swing tackle, a guy that can play both positions, that has played both positions. Like you said, better at left tackle than right tackle so far.
I was going to say, can he play both positions? Because the right tackle stuff has been pretty spotty. But I mean,
okay, yeah.
You want to see it get better there. Yeah.
Yes, you do. But I like that he's taking the right steps and latching on to the right guys to do something about it. We know that Munchak last year took Garrett Bowles really under his wing and really worked with him a lot. Got him to see things, and they communicated a lot better. And so now I think you're probably seeing some of the same things with Calvin Anderson. I still think even if he works his tail off and does everything right, I think at best you probably are just getting a quality swing tackle. I don't really see a quality starter in his game.
It will be interesting to see what the Broncos do if they bring in kind of a bargain bin right tackle, maybe retain Elijah Wilkinson. That's something I could see them doing. We could also maybe see, DeMar Dotson. That's another one that would really give a strong indication of what the Broncos think about Anderson. Now, obviously, he's better than, who was the right tackle? That was Jake Rogers. I think that was Max Crosby. He probably earned a second contract from that single game versus Jake Rogers. Man, we're sorry, Jake, if you're listening. But it will be interesting to see what happens. He's just somebody who you got to have depth on this roster, right? You need depth on the offensive line. He's really cheap. He knows the system. He knows the guys around him. It's an obvious no-brainer. You bring him back. Now, I never want to be put in a situation though where he is one of my top 2 tackles, right? Like that is. I feel very uncomfortable with that. I feel uncomfortable with him as the third tackle, right? Because there's a fair amount of projection there. Doesn't really have the pedigree, a little stiff in the hip. I know he's a smart dude. He can solve Rubik's Cubes behind his head and in outer space on one hand, right in a unicycle while playing the bagpipes, whatever. Like, cool. But, solid player to have. Probably not a guy that we're depending on.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
This is a transition here to this question. Speaking of which, kind of an outer transition, but besides offensive tackle, which I'm sure we will get back around to since it's the theme of the show today, the Broncos offense, just the situation as it finds itself in heading into free agency and the draft. Besides offense tackle, what is the Broncos' biggest need on the offense? Offense with a C. Is that the British spelling? Is that? Thank you, Robert. So,
I'll go running back.
Running back. Okay.
So Gordon going to be suspended at the beginning of the year, most likely.
Yeah.
He played really well down the stretch, and I kind of hope of the 2 that the Broncos have, of Philip Lindsay and him, that he's the guy that stays because he offers – I think he's the better fit for this offense. I know I'm going to be getting some hate for this, but he's the better pass blocker. Like I said, he's a better fit for this kind of scheme. We saw Philip Lindsay really struggle with this scheme. And I think he's a better pass catcher than Philip Lindsay. I know Lindsay keeps thinking he is that, but he's not. His game just is not translated in that direction.
Part of that, I will just little side. Part of that is the quarterback position, right? Like Yak is a quarterback stat. You have to get the ball in the right place at the right time for the guy who's getting the ball to maximize what they can do after the catch. And that's been a struggle of Locke. So I will say, especially with a guy with a small catch radius like Lindsay, but
he has a lot of drops.
Yes.
So you need a running back that can, if you're going to have Drew Lock start this next year, you need a running back that can catch throws that are not going to be perfect and go do something with it. Melvin Gordon's better at that than Philip Lindsay. Now, Philip Lindsay, I'm sure they will tender him. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're going to do second round or if they're going to do original round.
I don't either. I really am like, I don't know what they're going to do. Yeah. Here's Chase saying, Phil is on running back 1. Hate to say it. And here's a quick one from Stony Neff. If you can get a second round pick for Lindsay, you'd take it.
Yes,
please. God.
Yes.
Like that's a chance at like Javonte Williams or even like ETN or Michael Carter. Like there's, and then you can have him for 4 years. Yes, you take the second round tender for Lindsay.
Yeah, and like I said, I like Lindsay. He's had some explosive plays. He's had some of my favorite plays over these last few years. He's a Bronco through and through. But like I said, there's just limitations to his game. He's been injured the last 2 years. And
he's older.
Yeah, he's older. There's just a lot of things that play into all that. If he's back, I have no problem with that. If they are still the 1-2 punch, that's fine. I mean, it's still a pretty good 1-2 punch for the NFL. But I still think that there's a way to upgrade. There's some pretty good running backs in this draft. You just listed quite a few of them. There's some other guys in later rounds that I think could be a pretty darn good fit for the Broncos. Mm-hmm. It's one of those positions you can find somebody. It's not so much a need right away in the draft, but it's something that you're probably trying to find somebody at one point just to at least fill out that group. Like I said, you got Philip Lindsay who's been hurt. You've had Melvin Gordon who has injury history as well. So you need somebody that you're really not only setting up to help take away some of that risk, but also then setting up for the future that you keep that position cheap.
Okay, now I think this is a good point. And I was talking with both of our friends, Noel, who is, talks to us often on Facebook and Twitter, and he's been pounding the running back table for me. And he's been saying, it's all these guys are coming up. You're not sure about the future of these positions. And he is adamantly against offensive tackle. And I know that Robert said offensive tackle is not it, but even if Juwan James is back, I'm going to hijack this for a second. Offensive tackle has to be, outside of the quarterback position, the biggest need here, right? Yeah. Like, you do not know anything about Juwan James coming back. And as far as I'm concerned, he's a sunk cost. If you can get anything back from him, that's great. But I'm not going into this year depending on him in the slightest. And I think it's next year if the Broncos did move on from him. Let's say he plays good and you could trade him for even like a sixth. You'd have $8 million savings and $6 million dead cap. Great. take it. But all these things set up for the position for the Broncos, if they are going to add something that's non-quarterback on the offense, it's a tackle. And another reason that I would push back just scope-wise for the tackle versus running back is the running back you bring in, they're going to be as good as they ever are in the league day one. That's the thing about running back positions. There's not really much of a learning curve from the NFL for production-wise from college to the NFL. Day one is as good as they're ever going to be. That's not true for offensive tackles. So if you're drafting a running back this year, even though you already have this room with three guys, and I think Royce Freeman, he's not great, but I'm fine with him being, your third back, even your second back if you have a good guy above him. But that's not true for offensive tackle, right? Like next year, if we lose all their running backs and we have to bring in one cheap for free agency or one in the draft, that window starts then. Offensive tackle, you're drafting a guy this year now, and let's say he even loses out to Juwan James, it's still more about what he's going to be doing 2022, 2023. So I think from an investment wise and the vantage point of the duration of their career and the contract, offensive tackle just makes much more sense.
Yeah. So I would say that position for me too. But I had some people say not quarterback, Carl. Yes, I'm torn on this one because if I have my choice, yes, I'm taking quarterback early in this draft. Mm-hmm. That first round pick, if one of those top four guys falls to it, I'm jumping on that position right off the bat, just because quarterback is that valuable. Especially, I had a talk with somebody earlier today. You look at the Broncos ownership situation, and you just look what Dak Prescott just got paid. Broncos don't have the cash with the ownership situation right now to make a contract like that. It's going to be very hard. They're going to have to gut the rest of the roster to make that happen, which is not something I want to see happen. Yeah. And I like Drew Lock. I'm hesitant to say some of that. I still think he has some future in the NFL.
I mean, he's getting paid 1/20th per season of what Dak's going to be getting, like $42 million a year versus $2. That's the best argument you can make for Mac Jones round one, right? Like you're paying him at nothing, and then you can build a good team around him. Now that second contract, when it comes around, that's concerning. But are you drafting running backs and cycling them in and out or quarterbacks cycling them in and out like running backs? I mean, maybe that's the way of the future with how these quarterback contracts are getting bloated and the non-top five guys are getting paid. But anyway, that's beside the point. Circling back to Robert Caslow's point, though, running back I do think is the obvious one besides tackle and quarterback. But I will say two under-the-radar ones would be that Y tight end. The Broncos had Jeff Hireman for years. They paid Nick Vannett. You're not getting really any return on Vannett, right? Like they might even cut him. We should have asked Bob about that. Just not enough time. But that's somebody. So they interviewed Tremblay from Notre Dame, who might be the best blocking tight end in this class, and Albert Okwuegbunam and Noah Fant. While both of them can get okay as blockers, that's not their value, right? They're not that sixth offensive lineman. So that Y tight end is one. The other one might be X, right? If you're talking about running backs a year down the road, that X wide receiver position a year down the road is, poof. Like who knows? Like Cortland Sutton knee injury. What's he going to get on the open market? Tim Patrick, he could get something big as well. So that X wide receiver, which is the big guy taking on press, or the Y tight end, the blocking guy, inline guy. Those are two that I also think are maybe not, you don't want to pay for guys. Obviously you don't want to pay for guys in free agency there, but when it comes to the draft, if there's a guy you love there, I don't think it's out of the question because you're drafting them not for 2021, but 2022, 23, 24.
Yeah. And Bob does come in from behind the scenes with a comment on the Vannett situation. He says he's probably cut after the draft once the Broncos know what the tight end room looks like. Small cap hit and no guarantees is why.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. I honestly, how I was last year. I was like, why are you paying Vannett and creating dead cap when Jeff Hireman's the same guy but has even more explosiveness as far as what he can do after the catch? So we have a bunch of questions here about running back, Carl. Obviously, we built this podcast about the NFL draft. Do you have any day 3 or even day 2 running backs that, tickle your fancy?
Well, I really love both of the North Carolina guys. They're getting bumped up the board pretty quick. I mean, the more people watch them, the more people are like, these guys are good. Even Javonte Williams, there's some people talking about him being running back 1.
I think ETN, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, I don't want to be the team that takes the first one off the board, But if I can be the team that takes the last one of them, you're like, hallelujah. And I don't think ETN fits this scheme as much like Harris and Williams do. But I mean, Javonte Williams, and I don't know if he's as explosive, but like I see a lot of Nick Chubb when I watch him, just the physical running style, the explosiveness that he has in his frame. And he's a freight train, shot out of a cannon kind of guy. Yeah. So I really like Williams. Taking him in the first round. Oh man, Bob, behind the scenes, Bob, pull me off the cliff there, right? Like no running backs in the first round. I need the salary cap guy to tell me that too. But if he was there at 40.
So I'll give you one more name.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll give you one more name here. He did not have a good year this year.
Okay.
Chuba Hubbard. He had a terrible year.
Yeah. He concerns me, especially, I mean, running behind Tevin Jenkins and struggling. That's not great. But Tevin Jenkins, probably a guard under 33-inch arm length. That's, sorry guys. Sorry for me. I'm sad. But he scares me because Oklahoma State runs like a really wide alignment with their offensive line. And it's not really a scheme that for vision wise, you don't see it replicated in the NFL. On top of, I don't know if he can do anything in the pass game. So that scares me a good bit. I understand he was really good 2 years ago. But I am a little bit scared. If you're talking my day 3 guy would be Kylan Hill. Mississippi State, he's never going to be alpha guy, but I think he can bang between the tackles. He's got the size you want. That the Broncos are going to bang their head against the wall a few times a game with Shermer running that inside zone. I think Kylan Hill's a guy. If you can get him round 5, I like him. I also really like Chris Evans from Michigan. He got injured and was buried a little bit, but he showed really well at the Senior Bowl. I did a mock on another podcast yesterday where we had Broncos have 7th round picks and they have one pick in between. And I took Uphill, I think is his name, from Illinois State safety. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take Chris Evans with this next pick because there's just one in between. There's no way they're going to take the running back. Sniped. Took him right off. I was really bitter for a 7th round pick. But those are some guys that I like.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
I see a lot of Trey Sermon comments in here. Bawana's been teeing us up on them. What do you think about Trey Sermon?
I just, those big bruisers on the inside that don't offer much in the pass game. I mean, he's a decent pass blocker, so that adds a little bit of value to him. Mm-hmm. Suffered an injury there kind of at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of him. He has some, like I said, he has some power to his game, but I feel like I'm already getting that with Melvin Gordon. And I'm banking on Melvin Gordon being back this next year. I know some people keep saying, get that big bruiser. Melvin Gordon is one of the best short yardage running backs and goal line running backs in the NFL right now.
He was a top 7 running back in the NFL last year, and that's with the Broncos' interior offensive line. I mean, like we've been proponents of the offensive line is not a dumpster fire, but their running blocking took a step back last year compared to what they were even under Kugler. Like the Kugler year in the first few years of Munchak, they were much better on the interior moving guys. That was not the case last year. They struggled with that. Cushenberry, Glasgow, ankle injury, Reisner did not play as well. So the fact that Gordon was able to do what he did with the interior offensive line, not getting that push like they were. I mean, I'm not a big fan of paying running backs, but he was pretty good. And I think the guy's name is Chris Evans. I know he's Captain America, but I think the running back from Michigan's name is Chris Evans as well. Somebody have to check that one for me. Yeah, it is? Okay, good. Yeah. I thought so. I'm not crazy. So
we got some other talks. Oh, go ahead with that one.
We got Mr. Boggins coming in. Jason Owa, as fast as Lindsey, better value. Yeah, I saw he ran like a 4.3, 540 at 260 pounds. Jason Owa, he's crazy, but like I'm worried he's Jadeveon Clowney as far as like he doesn't have bend and therefore he can't finish. Now there's value for that, but like no sacks last year, and he had a great game against Indiana. But like you're betting a lot on upside. If I think there's a bunch of pass rushers left in this class. Him and Gregory Rousseau, whatever. Like super raw. Talented, raw.
Right. Well, yeah, you look at his college stats and you're like, this guy stinks.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not a finisher, like you said. Guys that have his kind of stats, and I know stats are not the end all be all.
It's a traits game.
But it's still guys that have his stats. It's maybe like a 5% chance that they work out in the NFL. Yeah. So you're taking huge risk on that upside that he becomes something, because right now he is all athlete and not much football player.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's a good point. We got William Swenson coming in here. Carl's going to get a lot of hate for saying he'd rather have Gordon than Lindsey, but I agree with him. I agree with you too, Carl. And we also have Crispy Intangibles like not the things you listed, people like him, teammates like him. I think that's valuable. I mean, there is something to be said about that. And I think I would weigh it more if he didn't play the running back position.
Yeah. Okay. I'm saying that I like Gordon more than Lindsey, but I really like Gordon in the system. Like you said, he was a top 7 running back this last year. The fumbles early in the season, yes, those were terrible. He's got to clean that up.
Yeah. But
he closed out that season as the offensive weapon for the Broncos. He was the offense to close out that year.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. And it's more Lindsey last year under Scangarello, good fit. Did well. You get moving sideways, cut up field, boom, you're gone. That's Lindsey. He's just not good in this system. He doesn't have the patience. He doesn't have the ability. And the gap scheme, what you like your running backs to do is really get on the back shoulder of the offensive lineman and wait for that hole to open up. That's where the gap opens up. Mm-hmm. You want them to kind of press on there and then know when to push. Lindsey just wants to run into the back of his offensive lineman because he's thinking the hole is going to open up right when I get there. And it just doesn't quite work out in this system. That's the thing is there's a lot of guys who are good players that are in the wrong system. I was reading an article the other day about the cornerback position, and they were talking about one of your boys from Iowa, Mr. King, that got traded to the Titans. He is a great zone corner. He went to a man scheme, and he just was not good in it.
Yeah.
And so you just got to line up scheme and talent at the same time. There's some guys that are versatile that can fit in any kind of scheme. This is why we keep kind of harping on the idea of Caleb Farley being cornerback number 1 because he can play about any scheme and still be really successful. But there's a lot of guys. You got to get them in the right place.
Yeah, especially, every single position. But we'll have to have that cornerback conversation at some point. I'm finally feeling emboldened enough to say that Greg Newsome is my cornerback too. We got Gustavo Lopez coming in here. Gustavo, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Good to see you. If Gordon gets charged, we should let him go and get Aaron Jones. Jones and Lindsey would be nasty. Okay, well, I think that's an interesting conversation to have. If Gordon's gets charged, which the Broncos probably already know what's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet, but they probably know what's going to happen. I'm not sure what that means. It could be that his guarantees are void, and the Broncos could move on from him, saving some cash. And that gives them some flexibility this year and in the future. But then turning right around, Gustavo says the Broncos should then pay Aaron Jones, former 5th-round pick out of University of Texas, El Paso. Carl, your thoughts on that?
I mean, you and I have both been big on not paying running backs.
Yeah.
And Jones is going to want top money for the position. I would have a tough time wanting to pay him that, especially last year he got banged up a little bit. And most running backs, you just don't get value back on the contract.
I will say, I think I'm more interested in paying like Melvin Gordon, what the Broncos did, than using a 1st-round pick on running back, because it's not only that, you're losing that cap money, but I think that cost-controlled player at a different position is more valuable than the short-term deal.
Yeah.
What, $8 million a year for Melvin Gordon? I mean, I didn't love it at the time. I'm still not a huge fan of the allocation, but it's better than burning a 1st-round pick on that position.
Yeah. But I will say I really like Aaron Jones, the player. He is a great running back, great balance. He's got three down ability. I really like his game a lot. And I think he would do well in this system. Again, it's just coming down to what kind of contract he's looking for. There's a reason that they didn't want to tag him, because they don't want to pay him that much money. They want to get him under that kind of deal. And so it's just, that's why running backs are just having to fight tooth and nail to get any kind of contract, a second contract, because nobody wants to pay him.
Yep, unless you're the Cowboys and you pay Ezekiel Elliott. And that's another thing. These teams double down after they take that 1st-round running back. I was like, well, we already invested in him. We can't just let him walk. And then you pay Todd Gurley and his knee is shot and you have all this dead cap. So it's a risky business, man. The running backs scare me. But Carl, I think we do have to have the quarterback conversation now, outside of everything else going on here. I think the biggest thing with the quarterback situation, and I've said it on here multiple times, the Broncos have a lot of flexibility because they are paying Drew Lock pennies, right? They're paying him practically nothing, $2 million this year, 2 more years of cost control. And in a league where Dak Prescott, who's really good, top 10 quarterback, $42 million a year, is he 22 times better, 21 times better than Drew Lock. Like I'm definitely not like a biggest Drew Lock supporter, but like there's something to be said about the value of that rookie contract. Now you're going to bump your head against it here pretty soon. But what are your thoughts on the Broncos quarterback position as it pertains to the current construction of the offensive roster?
Well, like you said, everything's cheap. I mean, even their backup situation. I mean, Rippon, they're probably going to cut Driscoll, and they're probably going to bring in a little bit more expensive veteran at the position, which they should. Driscoll was a nightmare that should have never happened.
Yeah,
but like I said, I like Drew Lock. But I just worry about this whole, okay, so let's say he plays average this next year. Well, then you're probably giving him another season and hoping that he develops even more. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to, if he plays average again, there's a lot of teams who get caught in this whole, I don't want to be without at least an average quarterback, so I'm going to pay them top money. And then that's when you see teams really fall off a cliff because those kind of quarterbacks can't carry their team.
I come back to Andy Dalton. Right, like on his rookie contract, the really good Bengals team. I know he was injured for the playoffs that one year. They had that really good team, and like who knows what they would have done. But like once they paid Andy Dalton, everybody gets fired. Right, that was it. And they paid an average quarterback who couldn't elevate the guys around him, and that was it. So
right,
that's scary.
So I guess the whole question has to be, what do you think is the ceiling of Drew Lock? Do you really believe that he's going to possibly get to that top 10 kind of level of like a Dak Prescott? Or do you think he's going to get to that average level, that Andy Dalton kind of thing? And then I feel like your team really does get stuck because too many teams are risk averse, that they operate from a place of fear more than a place of faith that they're going to make good decisions moving forward. And so
the
then
dichotomy of the front office versus the coaching staff, right? Like front office needs to be, and that's why teams like the Texans, where you don't have that front office in place previously with Bill O'Brien, they just blow it up, and they're in a horrible situation now because everything coaches focus on the here and now, where the general manager needs to think, next 5 years, next 6 years, and how that works. Yeah. So it's always that give and pull, and I think seeing people like, oh, why would the Broncos draft a quarterback? Vic Fangio and Pat Shurmur have coached for their lives. I mean, good point, but at the same time, like Shurmur's calling the shots, and if he thinks that the quarterback that he loves gives this team the best chance to get back into contention in the AFC West, you have to consider it. Like, and that's all we've ever said. I'm not saying you have to go do it because obviously there's a price. Maybe that you love Zach Wilson the most, and like you're not so big fan of Trey Lance or Justin Fields, and you can't get up to 2. Well, then you're falling back on Lock and a cheap option, which is not the worst. But it's you have to have those conversations, and we've rehashed this plenty of times. I'm sure we still will leading up to the draft as well.
Right. And this is where I always got, at first I always loved that John Elway said, we don't have a plan B. We're going with plan A. I kind of liked that for a while, but the more I look at the NFL and just see how roster building is made, you're going to have plan B, C, D, E, F. And so for me, like right now, plan A, Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's still the dream. I know probably not going to happen, but a man can dream. Plan B for me probably is one of those top 4 quarterbacks. Go up and get your guy. Just because I do like these guys. I do think all 4 of them have real potential to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I just think their ceiling is much higher than what Drew Lock's is, even coming out of college. I mean, there's a reason that Drew Lock went second round. There was a lot of questions of what his ceiling really was coming into the NFL.
50 starts and some erratic mechanics and ball placement. I mean, his completion percentage over expected was like some of the lowest of any player in the last 5 years. So
right. Yeah. And then plan C for me probably is stick with Drew Lock, bring in a veteran. And so, I mean, I can be okay with any of them because I can understand the reasoning behind each of them. But it's just one of those situations where the Broncos are running into a very weird situation with this quarterback. Like I said, coaches possibly could be fired after this next season. Mm-hmm. GM just came in. What is he going to do? Is he going to try to make his mark early on? Is he going to wait? There's just so much to play. Ownership plays into this. I don't think people realize just how much that really is going to matter in a lot of these big decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. An interesting one. We got Kenneth Booker coming in the house, one of our most recent additions to the MHH staff, Kenneth. Good picture there. What about James Conner? So we're talking more about paying running backs. Mr. Boggins also coming in here. Marlon Mack is an option. I don't know. I just have a really hard time paying running backs anything right now. I mean, I feel like these guys are better than Royce Freeman, right? But like, are they 4 or 5 times better than Royce Freeman? That's kind of what I'm thinking when you're talking about their costs. So, and then also you're in a weird situation where all your running backs are likely to become available after this year, right? Like, does it make sense to pay these guys up front right now in a limited cap year? I don't know. Like a day 3 running back, Robert Caslow coming in here. We talked a little bit about it. Kylan Hill is my guy. I really like him for this this defense. Rondell Stevenson. I always mess it was Rahandimore Stevenson from Oklahoma. Not great balance, but he's a big guy. I mean, you probably can get some sort of value out of him. He's another one, but I just know paying a running back this cycle just does not make sense to me.
All right.
Unless you let Lindsey walk and you get like Duke Johnson for like $2.5 million, right?
Yeah.
Then we're talking, but it's different. So go ahead, Carl.
All right. Let's get to Rod the Bro coming in here with the super chat. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I sent this, but commented saying I'm all for a quarterback first round. Trade the 3rd round pick for a late 1st round pick to get a cornerback and get a cornerback or a linebacker in the 2nd round.
What are you packaging there to get back up in the 1st round? Because I'm guessing a team's going to want a 2nd round pick, right? Like, to get up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You're either going to have to trade your 1st round and 3rd round. Yeah, future first to make that happen. Which, I mean, it's not the worst thing ever because, like I said, there are some cornerbacks. Greg Newsome he ran a 4.31 today at his pro day and just looked like an athletic freak. There's a lot of cornerbacks that are looking like an athletic freak right now.
Eric Stokes.
Yep. He had a great pro day as well. And so I don't mind that idea. I've tried to trade up from the 2nd round to get into that 1st round because then you get 5 years cost control of that cornerback because that's another position that money is getting out of hand, and in 5 years it's going to be out of hand again. Mm-hmm. But
it's also a position, Chad, I sent a piece to him Saturday night, just ran through Raven. It was about a 6-page article on Google Docs about investing in the secondary and how you get such a good return on investment if you throw quality or quantity at the position. And hasn't come out yet. Tis Chad, if you're listening. I mean, I agree with you. Not only just take cornerback there, you need to toss resources at it. It's a big reason I was asking Bob about paying 2 guys. Like, one's not going to cut it. I like Callahan. He's probably gone after this year. Ojemudia, a 3rd or 4th cornerback, like, go Hawks, but they need guys. They need bodies at that position. Last 2 seasons, they're down to you and me out there playing cornerback at the end of the year. Can't happen again. Not in the AFC West. Can't hang. But thank you very much for that comment, Rod. We appreciate it. A linebacker. Do you have any linebackers there, the late 1st to, let's say, mid-2nd that catch your eye?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about quite a few names on here. McGrone. I'm terrible with names.
Baron Browning, Jabril Cox,
Baron
Davis.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. Thank you. Those are all the big names there. Thank you. I know Nick's always got me with the names. I know you have some information on Dylan Moses.
Oh yeah. They were talking about it. Yeah.
Some of his medicals are looking bad.
Yeah, he was dealing with severe pain by the end of the season last year, and there are talks that some teams are like he might have to medically retire even, and it's something that you think every single year he's going to have serious pain by the time that they get to the end of the season. So he looked terrible this last year too. I know he's recovering, but he was playing through like severe pain, and I don't know if that's going to get any better. You might have to have another procedure to clean it up. Hard pass for me, right? Like that's too scary at this point. Right? If he was playing great this year and it was kind of a Miles Jack situation, right? Yeah. Or like then we can talk, but I don't know. Maybe if he's there like in the 6th round, then we can talk, but I'm not there. Mr. Boggins coming in. Can't wait to pay market quarterback money for mediocrity. I mean, it's something that the analytics say it's not the smartest investment, but it's something that the Vikings have done, and it's worked out pretty well for them. I mean, let's say that the same thing, trading for Sam Bradford, bringing in Case Keenum, like, oh, you're doing mediocrity. You got to the NFC Championship game because of that investment, right? Like, so there's something to be said about it. You have I mean, the Titans trading a 3rd round pick for Ryan Tannehill, right? Like he looked not up and down a lot. You already had that 2nd overall pick in Mariota, bringing in mediocrity, but he boomed. So, there is something to be said about bringing in talent.
Yeah. It's just one of those, are you fighting for making the playoffs, or are you fighting for Super Bowls?
Yeah.
Because, they just did, you had an article that you tagged on Twitter from Mark Schofield, where they were talking about the passing game and just how important it is really in today's NFL, and how teams are really trying to almost force teams, like dare them, run the ball, please run the ball, because you will not be as successful if you run the football.
I know Eric's typically a smart guy, but we had major disagreements last year with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick with the Chiefs, where I was like, why would you do that when you can invest in your defensive line, pass rush, or your offensive line? And I know that, some people say, oh, he was one of their best players in the Super Bowl. That's because the Buccaneers were like saying, please, for the love of God, take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hand and hand it to the running back, because that's a win. Every single time Patrick Mahomes does not pass the ball, that's a win. So I'm a proponent and a believer in EPA. Rushing the football is way less efficient in scoring points than passing the ball. You need to build a team to win in the pass game. Otherwise, unless you get to a point where like the run game is so like antiquated that, you have a weird team running a triple option and it's so different that like, you can like get value because teams don't know how to prepare for it. But I just think, it's a passing league. And if you can't do it or you can't stop it, you're smoked. You're done.
Yeah. All right. We did have a question. Here we go. Yes. From Jesse Edrick coming in. Did you see Chris Sims' top quarterbacks in the draft? Had Mac Jones ahead of Fields/Lance. Said Mac's arm is as strong and accurate as Burrow's. Sims has had quarterback success. He also talks highly of Mond. Thoughts? So he came up with the list. I think John has a picture for us. Here we go. Zach Wilson, number 1. Trevor Lawrence, number 2. Mac Jones, number 3. Kellen Mond, number 4. Justin Fields, number 5. Trey Lance, number 6.
You know what? Like, I respect Chris Sims doing this and putting it out there. I also respect him for not being in an echo chamber. Like, that's something that drives me nuts and scares the crap out of me on draft Twitter, and being involved in that process as much as I am. There's kind of starts to be homogenous thinking there, and you don't want that. In the words of George Patton, the general manager, or not the general manager. He said, if I'm in a room with, multiple people and they all have the same idea, that means somebody's not thinking, right? So like having the same rankings, every single person, that's bad. But that being said, I do disagree. And he has had success recently, but he also had Mitchell Trubisky ranked far and away ahead of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. So even though we put in all this time and Chris Sims played the quarterback position, it is still a crapshoot, right? Like, it still is a crapshoot, but it is interesting to see this. I would be willing to bet on Trey Lance, and I would fully admit that maybe that is an overcorrection to me being scared to death of Josh Allen, and understanding that like in today's NFL, and also like kind of being lukewarm on Justin Herbert, just because of some of the erratic pocket feel, accuracy, etc. But traits matter, right? Like, traits matter. And Trey Lance, like, let's say he doesn't not great year one, you're still bringing in probably the strongest arm in this class, and that running ability that raises the floor. And he was asked to do a lot of more mental things from a play-to-play basis than even Mac Jones was asked to do. So I respectfully disagree with these rankings with Chris Jones or Chris Sims, and a lot of it's going to depend on where these guys land, right? Like, landing spot is half the battle.
That's what I was going to point towards. Josh Allen landed in a situation where the coaching staff reworked the entire offense to fit Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson, again. Look at what they did. Look at the tight ends that they went out and drafted, because they wanted to get these big formations that really allow them to be a strong running team because of Lamar Jackson, and then have speed running down the field for the deep pass, through their wide receivers.
Spacing game.
They set up their offense around their quarterback. Even Patrick Mahomes. Like, I still think he'd be successful on most teams just because of his arm talent and just his improvisation. But at the same time, going to Andy Reid, one of the more creative playmakers or play callers in all of the NFL. Yeah. And going to a team that has lots and lots of playmakers that fit exactly what Patrick Mahomes does. A tight end that is one of the most athletic in the NFL. A wide receiver that is the most athletic in the NFL. They threw a lot at that to make that work. So for all these guys, any of these that the Broncos would bring in, it matters what they do to surround them and what kind of offensive system they try to set up to make sure that it fits those kind of players. And so
I think it's especially true for rookie contracts, right? Like if you're bringing in a rookie quarterback and your offense is desolate, you're not going to have a team that's going to be able to foster him and develop him over those fledgling stages in the NFL. But also you're shooting that value of the rookie contract, out. Like it makes like maybe Detroit's in position this year to go get a quarterback, right? That team has so many needs, like draft position wise, but like the roster itself is not ready to go get a quarterback because they're still 3-4 years from being set, right?
Yeah.
Like around them. And then by that point, you have to pay the quarterback. Yep. So that's another thing. Like I know the Broncos have holes on defense, but like this offense is ready for a plug and play rookie quarterback.
Yep.
And you spend money on the defense because you're not paying anything to the quarterback position. But I digress. You're paying guys. Carl, you can take this one.
All right. Does the signing bonus count against the cap? Coming in from Gary Leeds Palmer. Parts of it. So the way it works is signing bonus is the nice way for NFL teams to kind of space out money, or at least cap hits, where the player gets the money up front, but the actual cap hit doesn't come until over the 4 or 5 years of the contract, depending on how they want to set that up. So it helps the team and gets the player the money in their hands right away. That's why players love it. It's why teams love it. But it does come back to bite you because that is the kind of money that stays for the dead cap. That's what you see Juwan James, that signing bonus money, man, that hurts. That's why they can't cut him right now without any big. I mean, they're going to have a huge dead money hit if they decide to do something like that. So that's the big thing I want to emphasize as we get ready for free agency. When you're looking at contracts, don't look at the overall money. Look at the guarantees. Look at the signing bonus. That's the nuts and bolts of the real deal. That they can put, like Patrick Mahomes. I know they gave him this big 10-year contract. It's not really a 10-year contract.
Mm-mm.
Probably year 3 or 4, they're already looking to rework that deal. They've got options built into that. So it sounded crazy. 10 years, $500 million. It's not 10 years, $500 million. Honestly, if he plays for that 10 years, he's probably going to make more than $500 million.
I mean, with the cap likely going to explode some more with the new TV contracts coming. I mean, if anything says the NFL is confident in the state of the world and things returning to normal, that Dak Prescott contract says like, hey guys, money's coming. There's some normalcy coming around the way, and we won't go down the science side of things too hard here. But Carl, I can't find the discourse here, but earlier I want to hear your thoughts on the Broncos potentially making a move for Gardner Minshew. Obviously, he's got the short jorts on, likes to sit out in front of his painted orange RV van and throw footballs over mountains kind of guy. Great mustache, would rival your facial hair. What are your thoughts about the Broncos maybe entertaining a possibility of Minshew? It's one that I feel like is way more fan-driven than anything I've heard from anybody really connected to what's going on. But your thoughts?
Yeah. It's not the worst idea just because, like you said earlier, it's cheap. He has starting experience. He could challenge Drew Lock. I still think Drew Lock wins that battle. Minshew doesn't have the turnover like what Drew Lock does, but he's not got the arm talent either. And Drew Lock would have a little bit of a lead just because he's been in the offense for a year. But, I mean, if we're talking about trying to find that hedge bet, you could do worse than Gardner Minshew.
My question is, why would the Jags give him up? Right? Like, unless the Broncos are willing to give up the third round pick, which I'm not willing to do for Gardner Minshew, then why would they give him up? I mean, Trevor Lawrence has shoulder surgery. He's probably going to be the first overall pick. Maybe he's not ready for camp. And you still have Gardner Minshew. We talk about Drew Lock being pennies. Like, Gardner Minshew was a 5th round pick. They pay him nothing. So you'd have to really and the backup quarterback we saw this year, guys. I mean, in 2015, we saw it matters. You might have to turn to that guy for a couple games, and he might have to win a couple football games for you. So I just don't see any reality where, unless they're blown away by an offer, the Jags would move on from Minshew. He's still got cost control for 2 more years. It's just, if I was them, I'd be like, give me a 2nd round pick or I'm holding on him. Like, why would I give him up? And I'm not going to give him a 2nd round pick for Minshew.
Well, yeah. It'd have to be a 6th, 7th round pick kind of thing, or a swap of, well, they're picking about where we are anyway. So
yeah,
a swap of picks doesn't actually help them. So
and I get he's fun, but like, it just, you have to think about it. It's like turning off fair trades in football, right? Like the other side has to say yes. Right. I just don't see a reality where unless you're willing to overpay, they'd give him up because he's just too much value, even as a backup. So,
all right, we got Mr. Boggins coming in here. This is something you and I have talked about a lot.
Yes.
If we are talking true best player available that could be there at pick number 9, Mr. Boggins, Pitt at 9, move to wideout like Claypool. I'd still keep him at tight end, honestly. I'd just go 2 tight end set where you got one playing the kind of slot tight end, one playing the inline tight end, and that kind of athleticism on the field. Man, good luck to any team trying to cover both of those guys. If the Broncos are really saying we want this offense to have the most weapons of the NFL, adding Pitts, who is maybe the number 2 player in this draft, the guy that really, I think somebody said, ask yourself this question. Who is the player that has the most potential to become a Hall of Famer? And he said Pitts.
Mm-hmm. It's Daniel Jeremiah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very true. I know the tight end position is not valuable, but it's not as valuable as some other positions. No. But man, he is more than a tight end. He's a weapon. I mean, let's just. I think we need to. Okay, I'm not very good on the guitar. I know you see it every week, but it is not my specialty of instruments. I have a keyboard over here that I've been playing since I was like 7. I've got saxophone sitting over at the house. I can't really play it anymore because I broke out my front teeth. But those are my main instruments. I'm learning this one. You do not want to hear this. It would be
the Broncos take a quarterback in the first round. We have to play something, Carl. We have to play the Broncos quarterback song.
Okay, I'll come up with something at that point. Yeah, but
Kyle Pitts, man, I'm with you 100%. I will push back a little bit in regards to the tight end not being valuable because I've come around to the fact that I think positionless football is here, and guys who can bring whatever EPA per play, you get the return, right? Like that should be the driver. It's purely analytics, but that should be the driver. And like Travis Kelce, he's a tight end, but he's that weapon number 1 or 2 in that offense. George Kittle, right? Like he's a tight end, but he functions schematically as the wide receiver 1 for them. Darren Waller, wide receiver 1 for them. Kyle Pitts, he's coming in. I don't care if he's a tight end or not, right? Like you're going to be able to play him in line. You're going to play him behind the line of scrimmage sometimes, kind of that H-back role if you want. You can play him as a big slot. You can play him as an X, right? Like it doesn't matter. You're going to find a spot for him. And I know that Broncos already invested in Noah Fant, Alberto Cuebanum. Everybody loves him. I know he ran fast, big. He had some flashes. There's value there, but neither of those guys. And I'm wearing my Hawkeye Iowa shirt right now, right? Like go Hawks. But if Kyle Pitts is there at 9 and you're not getting a good trade offer, you take him and you figure out the rest later because he's too talented. And the Broncos, 5 years in a row finishing below 500, or at least 4 years in a row finishing below 500. You're not in a position where you can get picky. Take the talent. Figure it out later, as long as they fit. But Kyle Pitts fits. I mean, he's unbelievable. 6'6", 260 and running and jumping like that. I mean, you're overthinking it. You're over. I think people are overthinking it. And also, I don't want to poop on people too much, but like it's a myopic viewpoint, right? Like you're thinking about the Broncos team building in like the 2021 timeframe. Nah, you need to switch your perspective, man. Like those rookies, you need to be thinking 5, 10, 15 years. Looking back, if I'm like, imagine, here's a scenario. The Lions had very good defensive line in the 2012 draft. I think it was 2012 or 2013, 2014. And they're like, you know what? We don't need to take a defensive line. Let's go with Eric Ebron. And they pass on Aaron Donald. Idiots, right? Like that's so stupid in hindsight. You can't think that short term because you're going to get burned. You're just going to get burned.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, I mean, this is the tackle conversation in the first round. People going, well, we have to keep Juwan James. You said earlier, sometimes it takes those tackles time to develop. Plus, it's just a position of value. You want to protect whatever quarterback is going to be sitting there behind center, and having 2 quality tackles that are going to hold up against some of the best pass rushes. I mean, Chargers have a good pass rush. Chiefs are okay, but it makes it. I mean, we saw in the Super Bowl, having quality tackles does matter. Patrick Mahomes couldn't make up for the difference there of talent. And you got so much speed on the defensive line if you can go get a guy like that. So it's not just because it's not a day one starter doesn't always mean that it is a wasted pick either.
Yeah. Now here's the this is so upsetting for the Lions. You got to feel bad for them. I looked it up. It was a 2014 draft. The Lions were picking at 10 overall, and they take Eric Ebron. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Next guy's off the board. Taylor Luann, one of the best tackles in football. Odell Beckham Jr. Say what you will about the off-field antics. Definitely better return than Eric Ebron. After that, Aaron Donald. After that, Kyle Fuller. After that, Ryan Shazier, who was incredible before the injury. After that, Zach Martin. After that, CJ Mosley. I mean, you cannot paint yourself in a corner where you're like, I have to take this position, because then you are going to make a dumb decision. You need to be flexible in the draft and let the talent come to you. And obviously, if let's say somebody's like, oh my God, Kyle Pitts is there. Let's say it's the Ravens, right? Like imagine Kyle Pitts with Lamar Jackson, and they're like, we'll give you our first and second this year and our first next year. Like, okay, then we can have a conversation, but you shouldn't pass on that because you have Albert Okoye-Bonham and Noah Fant, right? Like, don't let good players take you from taking potentially great Hall of Fame caliber talents.
Right. And that's why Pitts, you got a chance, go get him. All right, base case coming in here. Man, that face every time just gets me. Thoughts on Brissett as competition for Locke? He's okay. I mean, again, you got a guy that's got starting experience, that looked decent at times, wasn't a great starter, has a good arm, would be able to make every throw that you would require of him in this offense. Not an athletic guy, but got a little bit, enough to move around just a bit, I guess you could say.
He's
not much. Yeah, he's pretty heavy-footed.
Stephen A. Smith would say he's an athlete.
He doesn't move the needle for me.
Yeah.
I mean, but a lot of these veterans are not going to move the needle for me. This is why a little bit I don't mind the idea of the Broncos trading for Darnold. Like if we're talking about like plan D on my list, it would be trading for Sam Darnold. Just because there is that just little bit of hope that maybe he can still turn it around, that maybe it really was Adam Gase being the reason that he couldn't do anything, or that the Jets just had nothing around him to actually even take advantage of his skill set. Throw in, he had injuries, being in a division that had not only the Bills up and coming, but of course the Patriots good there for so many years.
There's a lot of reasons. A team that's not ready to maximize that rookie contract too, right? Like they traded up for their quarterback, and their offense is freaking terrible around him, right? Like who's their best guy? Like Denzel Mims hardly played last year. Chris Herndon, barely a tight end too. Mekhi Becton looks incredible, and maybe they're starting to turn things around, but like that rookie contract, see ya, there it goes. There's something really to be said about not only, going up and getting that rookie contract, but making sure that roster is ready to maximize that rookie contract.
Yeah.
And Mr. Boggan's coming in. Great point here. Everyone gets too obsessed with first round to fill holes. There are still second through seventh rounds and free agency people. This stuck with me. I think it was Mike Renner of Pro Football Focus who said it multiple times. And this is a mantra I hope you guys can take away from this show. Free agency is about addressing needs or filling gaps, filling needs. And the draft is about obtaining the best talent. If you go in with that process, especially in a year where the picture is going to be incomplete, there's not a standardized combine. You're not going to get to bring these guys in the facility. If you're just straight up not taking the best guy on the board with slight arrangement based on like scheme fit and positional value, et cetera, obviously that should still dictate your board, but you're going to make mistakes and you just can't do that, right? Like that's just, you're not in a position to do that. Your team has been bad. You need to take talent.
Yep.
All right. We got base case coming in again here. Hands off the wheel there for me. Base case. Thank you so much, Base. Missed you earlier. You'll have to go back and listen to what Bob had to say. So what's your plan A, B, C at QB, Carl? I think he mentioned them earlier. I can recap. Plan number 1 is Deshaun Watson. Plan B is going and getting a quarterback in the draft, one of the top 4. I got to say, who are the top 4, Carl? We just need to hear it.
Okay, so Trevor Lawrence, you got Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance.
Okay, so I mean, obviously we had Chris Sims earlier, so there's not an echo chamber in here, but it's definitely an interesting one. And then C was is Darnold above? I guess, okay, let's say the options are bringing in a guy in free agency or trading the 3rd round pick 71 overall for Sam Darnold. Where are you going?
I'm trading for Sam Darnold because you have to take some risk at the quarterback position if you're going to get anywhere in the NFL. I mean, Tampa Bay bringing in a quarterback that looked like he was on his downhill and Tom Brady. Boom. Resurrects his career, goes and wins the Super Bowl. Chiefs trading up for Patrick Mahomes. Sometimes you just got to take a little bit of risk and see what you can do. A third-round pick, and even if Sam Darnold doesn't turn anything, you've at least got a quality backup that's not going to be off this world expensive for a year. That's worth a third-round pick. That's really, I mean, that's pennies on the dollar when we're really looking at the grand scheme of things. So yeah. I'd rather take that risk than sign some veteran that you know is absolutely going to do nothing for you. I mean, they might go win a couple games. They might keep the ship afloat a little bit, but they're not going to go win you a Super Bowl. They're not going to go really carry your team to the playoffs. I just would rather take that risk.
And here's an interesting position I want to get to you. Charlie Beagle in the house. Charlie, we appreciate you sticking around. I mean, all offseason. I know he's been a little bit cantankerous. I think that's the word in the comment section. I think he was giving us a hard time about the Ryan Fitzpatrick theme for the Saturday show. Ryan Fitzpatrick. But Bears trade up to get Trubisky, kind of an opposite of the Broncos or the Darnold situation. So I guess which one was better in hindsight? Both of them haven't worked out. But Mitch Trubisky with the Bears and Sam Darnold with the Jets. With anything you can pull from that, I mean, those are kind of the most recent kind of like, oof, not great. And they've really tanked their teams for the past few seasons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, there's risks that you take that don't work out. That's the thing. Right now, I read a stat earlier today, 63% of quarterbacks taken in the first round end up becoming at least halfway decent quality starters for their team. Now, do they become all-stars? Not all of them, obviously. I mean, you only got 10 guys that I would consider to be stars at the quarterback position. I'll cut it off at a top 10. But that's where you're going to find your best chance to get one of those guys. After the first round, it drops down to, so you go from 64, 63% down to 27% in the second round. And it just drops dramatically with each round. The fifth round is the worst round to take a quarterback. They are at 0%. For some reason, the fifth round, that's the worst place to go.
All it takes is one, though.
I know.
You can get the next Brady.
Sixth round would be nothing without Tom Brady. But no, that's why I push a little bit on this whole. I mean, Drew Lock's chances of becoming a successful quarterback, it was slim just with him being a second round quarterback from the get-go. And I understand draft position shouldn't matter, but we can look at history and say there's a lot of backing of why this has not happened. Now
there's a little bit of selection bias there. Like the guys in the first round are going to get more chances because of that pedigree, but for sure. You're right. I mean, you're right.
But and you're right. There are guys in the first round that haven't worked out, but I'd rather just take if I'm going to take risk at a position, it's going to be at quarterback.
And I do want to make this point. I think it was Chris Page on the Cover One podcast. He does really good work over covering the Bills, but he's been a football mind that I've liked to pick for years. And he made a great point of how these quarterback contracts are structured these days, where I think it was Chris P. He just said, let me see. So you draft one of these sure things and they fail. Then what? Do it again next year? Yes. Yes, that's exactly right, Chris. You did it. You found it. He's talking on the comment section, not otherwise, but it was just too good to make my point. The team, let's say before the new CBA came into effect, you had these monster contracts to these rookies like Sam Bradford. And if that guy busts with how big that contract was and how much guaranteed money there was, you are hurt. Like you are hurting. But with how these contracts are now so cost controlled for rookie contracts, especially at quarterback, if you miss on a guy, you have the ability to say, you know what? Didn't work. Let's go back to the well. 2 years later, you're not on that financial hook like you would have been before that CBA, before these rookie contracts were slated. So I'm 100% about, just keep swinging, right? And if you mess up, guess what? You're probably going to be back in the same situation. You still want to try to build that core around them. You don't only have a first round pick. There are other avenues to add talent to teams.
Right.
But it's, you're not, the Jets they're bad right now. But like that, they have many avenues to improve from here. They're going to get more assets from trading Darnold. Mekhi Becton looks great. They got a lot of cap space. They got 2 first-round picks this year. They got another 2 first-round picks next year. Like, did Sam Darnold kill that team by picking him? No, they missed, but they're not sunk. So you just go back to the well.
Right. And I saw some other names brought up here. Let me see, like Darnold, Rosen. I mean, look at Rosen. So they swung and missed. Are the next year, are they going to sit there and say, okay, we have the first overall pick. You know what? We took that risk last time. We're not going to take it this time. No, they went and got Kyler Murray, who is a very up-and-coming quarterback. You could probably say he's easily top 5 in the NFC right now, because NFC is not quite as deep as the AFC. But, I mean, he's a talented quarterback. And, we do have matching hats.
I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I've been wearing it almost every day, and I've had a few people make comments about it and hopefully tune into the show. But
hashtag for the brand.
You know, right now, here's the thing. If you stick with Locke, you're taking a risk. You're hoping that he can develop. If you decide to move on from him and go with a first-round guy, you're taking a risk. You decide to trade for Sam Darnold, you're taking a risk. No matter what you do at the quarterback position, even trading for Deshaun Watson, you're taking a risk in that situation. So we don't know which one's going to be the right one. We're not going to know for probably the next 5 years what's going to be the right decision in any of that. But no matter what, you're taking a risk. So take some chances somewhere. You got to do something at the quarterback position until you know you have the guy. You keep trying.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, we probably should get on out of here. I know we got things to do. I need to get an article in here today. I probably got to go cook dinner as well. Check on the wife, check on the kids. But that's going to do it for Building the Broncos today. We really appreciate you guys coming. And we appreciate Bob stopping by today, guys, spreading some cap gospel for us, the almighty dollar, as it tends to, be some gospel here in the United States. Guys, find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH. Also find Bob on Twitter at Bob Morris Sports. And, of course, find our guy, John K, at John K MHH. I always want to spell this one because it'd be easy you don't see it on screen here, but it's JONKAY MHH. Also, guys, go to Mile High Huddle. Check out our latest content. Like I said, I'm going to work on an article here pretty soon tonight. I think I've gotten like 12 already this month. Carl, what do you got coming down the tracks? You got anything you're working on right now?
Nothing off the top of my head. It's just been, unfortunately for me, work has been pretty crazy, and also training for this race. So I know I've been slacking on writing the articles lately, but I'll get on that here very, very soon. Don't worry, guys.
I feel like I'm being am I being cyberbullied by Big E Bronco?
Of course.
You guys should see the group chat with Eric. I'm used to it. But guys, head over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, like, subscribe, share. If you are joining us on YouTube, that's the single most helpful thing you can do to help us bring these shows every week. Also, if you're on Facebook right now, I see we have 22 likes right now. That's a good one. Kareem Jackson, I'm all about that 22. That's a good spot. But if we can get another couple likes in there when this is over, or even right now, that would be awesome. That's another way that can help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives. It's not just this show. It's the Mile High Insiders. It's the Dove Valley Deep Divers. And, of course, the Huddle Up podcast with Zach and Chad. So we appreciate that, and it helps all of us. Guys, find us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. Carl, you got any plans the rest of the night? You going to go practice on that guitar?
I've got a 40-minute run I have to go do. So
40-minute run. Wow.
40-minute. Yep. That's I've got a calendar leading up to my race. I had a couple people ask what the race is. I'm doing a Spartan race, and I'm going to the enemy's territory, going to Las Vegas. Maybe I'll go see the Roomba, hang out there a little bit. But no, I've got here at the end of March, I'm heading out there. So got to keep that running going. All
right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Hopefully everyone's staying safe. Hopefully everybody, things are looking up. I know this past year is rough. It's been a rough go for the Broncos, and especially just last year, the state of the world, pretty rough, but got a feeling it's going to be a good off season, good summer, leading into an even better fall. A lot of optimism, a lot of hope. Stay safe, guys. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.